Have you fallen into an open manhole recently? Do you find yourself in the company of strangers? Well, then you might very well be in the feature Underground. In certain circles, my name is Hunter Lanier, and I am here today with a review of the upcoming Wes Anderson film, The Phoenician Scheme, which releases in theaters everywhere, or mostly everywhere, on June 6th. It stars Benicio del Toro, Mia Threapleton, who I've never heard of before, but is apparently Kate Winslet's daughter, and Michael Cera, who is not Kate Winslet's daughter, nor anyone else's. I suppose the first thing I should say about The Phoenician Scheme, and this probably doesn't come as much of a surprise, is that it is very much recognizable as a Wes Anderson movie. I said something similar about David Mamet in my review of his new movie, Henry Johnson, but Wes Anderson hasn't suddenly decided to change his style, nor do I necessarily think that would be a good idea to do so. I remember talking to someone several years ago who told me that she didn't like Wes Anderson movies because they were all the same. First of all, I think it is a testament to Wes Anderson's abilities as an artist that he did develop a style that is so singular and recognizable that any filmgoer, not just a movie nerd, can pick up on it and like or dislike it. The other thing is that I don't think I've ever heard that same kind of derogatory talk about anything other than movies. I don't think I've ever heard anyone serious ever accuse Hemingway of being a bad writer because all of his books are the same, because they all use the same sparse writing style, which, like Wes Anderson's style, is very easy to satire but very difficult to mimic. I don't think anyone has ever accused Louis Armstrong of being a one-trick pony because he only ever played jazz and didn't branch out into folk music or rockabilly. I don't think anyone ever accused him of being a hack because he only played the trumpet and never played the bass guitar. Now, I know Wes Anderson did an interview recently where he said something like he doesn't have an aesthetic. I understand why he would say that because no artist wants to feel pigeonholed, like they're not evolving. But I also think it's because he doesn't view his style as a rule set to follow, but rather as something that springs naturally from his proclivities, his influences, and the necessities of the moment. So all of that is a roundabout way of me saying that if you are on the Wes Anderson wavelength, the Phoenician Scheme will tickle you in all the right places. It has the static frames, dense with details. It has the camera swooshing around on an axis. It has the syncopated editing. The characters all say their lines as quickly as possible in that old Hollywood, His Girl Friday sort of way. But likewise, if you're not on the Wes Anderson wavelength, if you were that person that I talked to many years ago, I don't think the Phoenician Scheme will all of a sudden sway you. Although there are certain things in it that are unique among Wes Anderson movies. Let's get into the plot briefly. Now, normally I don't like to talk about plots because they're usually the most boring parts of movies, but this one's kind of fun to talk about. Benicio del Toro plays Jaja Corda, no relation to Gabor, who is one of the most wealthy men in the world. So wealthy that governments and competitors are actively trying to sabotage and or kill him, meaning he lives most of his life off the grid. This leads to one of the movie's funniest running gags, which is that Jaja recognizes all of the assassins that are trying to kill him, thereby foiling their plot because he has also hired them in the past. Think of the character as if Clark Gable played John McAfee. We find Jaja in the middle of pulling off the titular scheme, which the details of which are not important, other than the mission of the movie is to travel the world to quirky investors and try to get them to invest in the scheme. And I do wonder how much of this plot is inspired by the adventures of trying to finance a movie. After foiling death one too many times, Jaja decides to visit his eldest daughter, who is now a nun in a convent, and write her into his will so that should he die, his money doesn't fall into the wrong hands. So his nun daughter joins him on this mission, along with the latest in a long line of ill-fated tutors that Zsa keeps around to teach him about whatever subject is fancying him at the moment. Currently, that subject is bugs, and the tutor is a Swedish man named Bjorn, played by Michael Cera. Put simply, this is Wes Anderson's take on a globetrotting espionage thriller comedy, sort of like Charade. Now, one of the most unexpected aspects of this movie is that it is the most action-packed of any Wes Anderson film. There are explosions, gunfights, fighter jets, fistfights, and even a 2-on-2 basketball game, which I don't know if that falls under the action category, but it is one of the funniest scenes in the movie. And if you've ever wondered what it might look like if Wes Anderson shot an action movie, you're about to find out. And it is pretty funny. In fact, one of my favorite moments in the movie is this whole shtick where Benicio del Toro is getting slapped and his head is swinging to one side and the camera is taking the POV, so the camera keeps swinging and landing on Jeffrey Wright's disturbed face. And I guess I should take this moment to say that the entire movie, I think, is very funny. As alluded to, the characters speak very fast, so there are just so many jokes upon jokes thrown at you. There are jokes and then jokes on the offbeat that the movie becomes, like a lot of Wes Anderson's best movies, highly rewatchable. I would have no qualms about going to see this movie again in theaters. The first 30 seconds, I think, maybe some of the funniest first 30 seconds of any movie I've ever seen. And that whole first 30 seconds ends up paying dividends throughout the rest of the movie as this quiet visual gag with Michael Cera in the airplane. Again, the jokes do come fast, so I'm not going to linger on every single thing that made me smile. But I do want to mention that Zsa carries around this miniature polygraph that he attaches to people's fingertips to test their allegiance. And if I ever become an eccentric millionaire, that is one movie prop that I would be interested in acquiring. Okay, so the movie is really funny. But I was trying to think of what separates the great Wes Anderson movies from the ones that are merely just amusing. Because I think they're all at least that. I think a big part of it is how well the movie succeeds in everything that's not the comedy. Because there's usually some idea or feeling, however vague, that Wes Anderson is exploring in his movies. For example, Moonrise Kingdom does a great job of capturing that feeling of being a kid and how at that age, everything is a new adventure. Asteroid City, on the other hand, which came out just a couple of years ago, explores some general existential stuff, and I don't think that part of that movie worked. The Phoenician Scheme, I think, is an example of Anderson's ulterior motives working. The movie explores the relationship between an atheist, wealthy father and his very modest nun of a daughter, and how they gradually come to meet in an unlikely middle. Despite a complete lack of sentimentality, which is something that is really relevant to all of Wes Anderson's movies that I don't think I ever really appreciated until now, he still manages to make this relationship between father and daughter and how they, in their journey toward the middle, he still manages to make that relationship really affecting and really believable. Michael Cera's character, Bjorn, is the third wheel on this adventure, but he too ends up being a great character and very easy to root for. I also want to mention Benedict Cumberbatch's character, who looks like a cross between a silent movie villain and Leo Tolstoy. I have to imagine that was intentional and the exact metric they used. Well, those are all my thoughts on the Phoenician Scheme. Now is the time for you to let me know your thoughts on my thoughts. The next press screening I have lined up is, I believe, for Celine Song's The Materialists. I'm seeing that, I think, on June 9th, June 10th. I'm not sure when the movie actually comes out, but I'll have that review out as soon as I can. Since that's a couple weeks away, I believe, I'm going to get an episode of Feature Pantheon out before then. If you don't know, Feature Pantheon is my new series of videos that I will be doing where I will be reviewing not an upcoming movie, not a new movie, but rather my favorite movies of all time. The first episode, if you missed it, was on Akira Kurosawa's High and Low. The next episode will be on, you're going to have to watch the video to find out, or at least look at the thumbnail. Until then, I am here to once again remind you that every day underground is a good day.